Welcome to Global Truth. This is your host, Dr. Nasir Baig. Thousands of students across Australia walked out of their classrooms, put down their textbooks, and took to the streets. From Sydney Town Hall to Forest Place in Perth, young people, some still in their high school uniforms, joined nationwide rallies organized by the National Union of Students. The target of their outrage, Senator Pauline Hanson and her political party. Pauline Hanson's One Nation. For nearly 3 decades, Hansen has been one of Australia's most polarizing political figures. So, why now? What made students risk truancy and disciplinary action to march against a politician who first gained fame before many of them were even born? Today, we break down who Pauline Hanson is, what One Nation stands for, and the exact triggers that send thousands of young Australians into the streets. So, who is Pauline Hanson? To understand the protest, you have to understand the history. Pauline Hanson was a fish and chip shop owner in Ipswich, Queensland, when she entered local politics in 1994. In 1996, she ran as a Liberal Party candidate for the federal seat of Oxley. But right before the election, the Liberal Party disendorsed her over controversial remarks she made about Indigenous Australians receiving preferential government assistance. She remained on the ballot paper as an independent and won in a landslide victory. Her maiden speech sent shockwaves through Australian politics. She claimed that Australia was in danger of being swamped by Asians, attacked multiculturalism, and argued that non-white immigration should be drastically reduced. Overnight, she became a household name and a flashpoint for intense national debate. In 1997, Hanson co-founded Pauline Hanson's One Nation. The party rode a wave of populist support, winning nearly 23% of the vote in the 1998 Queensland state elections. But internal party feuds, legal trouble, including a briefly served jail sentence that was later overturned on appeal, and electoral losses, saw her political power ebb and flow over the next 2 decades. In 2016, Hanson staged a major political comeback, winning a seat in the Australian Senate representing Queensland, along with 3 other One Nation senators. She has remained in the Senate ever since, maintaining a consistent media presence and a loyal political base. So, what is One Nation and what policies define her political party today? One Nation is a right-wing populist, nationalist, and a social conservative party. The party's platform focuses heavily on identity, immigration, sovereignty, and economic protectionism. Let's see what the party stands for one by one. The first thing is immigration and cultural policy, calling for severe cuts to total immigration numbers, opposing multicultural initiatives, and advocating for a single assimilated national identity. Historically, refocusing her critiques from Asian migration in the 1990s to Muslim and Middle Eastern migration in the 2010s, and broader global migration today. Second is Indigenous and constitutional issues. Strong opposition to special funding or designated advisory bodies for First Nations communities. Opposing native title rights and resisting calls for treaty or constitutional recognition. Third is social and educational stances. Opposition to LGBTQ+ and gender diversity initiatives in public schools, voting against federal proposals for free TAFE and increased public school funding, and opposing climate change action and net zero targets in favor of protecting traditional energy industries like coal and gas. To her supporters, Hanson is a straight talker who fights for working class Australians left behind by major parties and globalism. But to her critics, especially younger generations, her rhetoric represents division, systemic racism, and social regression. So why did this massive nationwide walkout happen right now? A convergence of political developments ignited this sudden push. First, recent political polling shows a sharp rise in support of One Nation. Recent surveys suggest One Nation has seen its primary vote swell, placing them prominently in federal polls as voters express frustration over inflation and the cost of living crisis. While One Nation's national polling numbers have hit historic highs, its support among Gen Z voters aged 18 to 29 remains low, hovering around 10%. This stark generational divide created a sense of urgency among young people who feel the country's political direction is shifting away from their values. Second, a series of high-profile public appearances added fuel to the fire. Hanson's address at the National Press Club called for a return to a monocultural Australia. Shortly after, she appeared on a podcast hosted by British far-right activist Tommy Robinson during an official overseas trip, where she targeted multiculturalism and blamed the end of the white Australian policy for current migration dynamics. Third, student groups highlighted her voting record in Parliament on issues directly affecting youth, such as public education funding, climate policy, and social inclusion. Organized by the National Union of Students alongside secondary school activism groups, the walkouts were designed to show that younger demographics forcefully reject Hanson's politics. For many high schoolers too young to vote, hitting the street was their primary method to exert political influence. When asked about the walkouts, Senator Hansen was dismissive. She suggested schools should teach kids how to think, not what to think, urging students to protest against rising inflation and the cost of living instead. To view Pauline Hanson's current resurgence solely as an Australian anomaly is to miss a much larger global transformation. What is happening in Australia directly mirrors the broader anti-immigration and populist wave surging across Western nations. Across Europe, North America, and Britain, long-standing political norms around immigration and border security are being fundamentally rewritten. The Transatlantic Alliance of Populism. Hanson's recent collaboration with prominent UK activists like Tommy Robinson is not an isolated incident. It reflects an increasingly interconnected global network of right-wing political networks sharing rhetoric, media channels, and campaign strategies across international borders. Second is economic anxiety and cultural backlash. Across the West, populist parties are leveraging cost of living pressures, housing shortages, and decaying public infrastructure to argue that mass migration is the primary driver of domestic strain. By framing complex macroeconomic challenges as direct results of open borders, populist leaders convert widespread economic anxiety into voter turnout. Then comes the generational divide. The Western anti-immigrant movement exposes a profound demographic rift. Older generations, often feeling culturally alienated by rapid social changes, tend to lean towards nativist messaging. Conversely, Gen Z and younger demographics, growing up in diverse, hyper-connected environments, tend to view anti-immigrant rhetoric as a threat to fundamental civil rights, social cohesion, and climate justice. 30 years after Pauline Hanson first entered Parliament, Australia and the broader Western world remains locked in a fierce contest over national identity, border policies, and social values. The student walkouts across Australia demonstrate that young people refuse to remain passive bystanders while populist movements redefine their future. While Hanson and her supporters view their platform as a necessary defense of national sovereignty, Australia's youngest generation has drawn a clear line in the sand, using their collective voice to reject xenophobia and demand an inclusive society. As anti-immigrant wave continues to test democratic institutions across the globe, the clash between the entrenched populist politics and youth-led resistance will likely define the political landscape of decades to come. Thank you for being with us. I hope you like the show. Like and subscribe if you like the content. Until next time, take good care of yourself.